So welcome to our webinar today on Southwest Minnesota Arts Council's Art Project Grants for fiscal year 2021, which for us runs from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. I am Carolyn Koska. I'm the Financial and Grants Administrator here at Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. First, I'll just run down what we're going to talk about today. We'll start out with kind of an overview of our organization. Then we'll look at the guidelines for this grant program. We'll go over to our website and I'll show you what resources are available for you there. And then we'll go into the actual grant system and take a look, a walkthrough of our application. And finally, we'll just talk about how the whole grant process works. I am going to mute everyone for now, and we'll stop a couple places along the way for questions, or feel free to type any questions into that chat window, and I will try and check those when we stop as well. And then at the end of the presentation, if you want to talk directly then too, I'll open things up then also. So the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, or SMOC, is a nonprofit organization committed to promoting and encouraging the development of the arts in the 18 counties of Southwest Minnesota by serving as a source of funds and technical services which enable local organizations, educational institutions, and individuals to sponsor, create, and promote the arts in their communities. We are one of 11 regional arts councils that cover the state of Minnesota. Here's our region down in the corner there. Our funding comes mostly from the state of Minnesota, with an allocation from their general fund and also arts and cultural heritage or legacy funds. We also get funding from the McKnight Foundation, which we use for our grants for individual artists, and memberships and donations from our region. Some things that we are committed to include supporting artists and arts organizations in creating, producing, and presenting high-quality arts activities, overcoming barriers to accessing high-quality arts activities, instilling the arts into the community and public life, supporting high-quality, age-appropriate arts education for all ages to develop knowledge, skills, and understanding of the arts, and supporting events and activities that represent the diverse ethnic and cultural arts traditions of the region. So these are just some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about what type of project you might like to do, because ultimately they should come back to these commitments that we have. So now we'll look at our art project grant program. The intent of which is to stimulate and encourage the creation, performance, and appreciation of the arts. These grants are open to both nonprofit organizations and units of government, which would be a city or a county. Schools should apply through our Arts in the Schools grant program and not through this art project program. Applicant organizations need to be located within the 18 counties of our service region, and those counties include Big Stone, Chippewa, Cottonwood, Jackson, Candy, Ojai, Lacoparo, Lincoln, Lyon, McLeod, Meeker, Murray, Nobles, Pipestone, Redwood, Renville, Rock, Swift, and Yellow Medicine, along with tribal lands within our service area. We acknowledge that this region occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people who have stewarded these lands throughout the generations. Types of projects you can do with this grant include music performances, dance performances, theater, and these can be either performances that are put on by community groups or performances that are brought in from outside of the community. More projects include visual art exhibits, readings by authors, art classes for community members of all ages, public art, and arts festivals. Art project grants are available for up to $7,000. If you're doing a prepackaged theater project, which is what we call bringing in a group such as Missoula or Prairie Fire Children's Theater, you can request up to $2,500. That's because that type of project can also be requested in the Arts in the Schools program, and we're keeping the amounts the same. So for both of these grants, no matching funds are required this year. Usually we require applicants to come up with at least 20% of the cost of their project, whether that's through their own funding or through donations or ticket sales. But this year we are not requiring that organizations put up any of their own funds. If your organization has received an operating support grant from us, you cannot include prorated general operating costs in the budget for your art project. Now we'll look at a few eligibility things. The following are not eligible for SMOC grants: projects that don't have an art focus, activities of a for-profit project or business, educational projects within a school system. That is where the school should apply in the program specifically for them. Requiring artists to pay excessive entry or exhibition fees. Activities that take place outside of Minnesota, since we are using state funds. Activities not open to the public. Religious socialization of the participants or audience. Fundraising events. In other words, the grant should allow your project to break even, not to make a profit. Also ineligible are payments of debts incurred before the grant begins, grant funds being used to match another SMOC grant, and applicants with past due final reports. It's a good idea to read through both the guidelines for this specific program, and then we have some general guidelines that apply to all of our grant programs. And we'll look at where you can find those later, but it's a good idea to read carefully through those as you are getting ready to apply. When you're applying, you're going to need a project start date and end date. The start date is basically when your project is set in motion, and that could include activities like starting your auditions, rehearsals, ordering supplies, paying any fees or contracts involved with your project, or doing any advertising. So with that in mind, your start date should not be the date of your first project event, because that wouldn't allow you any time to do those things that we just went through on the last slide. You cannot expend any funds before that project start date. If there's something that absolutely needs to be paid for before then, if you need to, for instance, put down a deposit for an artist that's coming into your community, you would have to leave that amount out of your grant project budget. And again, no advertising can take place before that start date. Then you'll also need to choose a project end date, and all projects awarded this year need to be finished up by June 30th, 2022. Here's a look at some of the deadlines we have. We have 3 deadlines this year. One we've already passed, which was September 9th. But the next one coming up is December 9th for projects starting February 1st or later. And then our third round deadline is March 24th for projects starting May 1st or later. So you'll kind of need to plan out what is the best round to apply for your project. The December deadline is actually the best time to apply for project activities going on late spring and into the summer. And then that March 24th deadline is a good time to apply for things happening during the summer and into the fall of next year. I'll also note for you that all applications need to be submitted by 4:30 p.m. on the deadline date. Our grant system will not allow you to submit after that time. You'll need to have 2 people associated with your grant. One is the project director, and that's the person who is just most directly responsible for your project. A lot of times it is the person who's also writing the grant, but it doesn't have to be. And then you'll also need an authorizing official, which would be a president or treasurer of your organization or somebody else who has that authorizing power. And the project director and the authorizing official cannot be the same person. It has to be two different people, and both of them will need to sign your application, contract, and final report. If your organization does not have 501c3 status or is not an official unit of government, you'll need to find an organization that is one of those things to act as your fiscal sponsor. So you would need to have a signed agreement between your organization and theirs showing what that relationship will be like and how paying of bills will happen, etc. And a representative from that fiscal sponsor organization needs to also sign the application, contract, and final report. And that fiscal sponsor will receive your grant funds, and they are legally responsible for the management of the funds and completion of the project. All right, I'm going to stop for a moment here. If there are any questions, I'm going to unmute everyone here too. Any questions so far? All right, if no questions right now, I'm going to just mute everyone again, and we will head on over to our website. You can take a look at what is there for you. So there's a couple of places from our website that you can get to our grant system. One is right on the homepage. There's this black grants box here with the login button. And while we're here, I'll just point out a couple of things on our slides. We are in the middle of running a arts needs assessment survey. If you have any interest in filling out, you've got a couple more days to do that. And then also, whoops, come back. We recently put together some videos of projects from each of our 18 counties, so you can access those there as well. But now we're going to go to our grants and look at the grants for organizations. And here's our art project grants. So here's the other place where you're able to log in. Each grant program page has this Apply Now button, which will take you to the system, even if you're not applying and you're just returning there. It just takes you to the login. And we'll take a look what's all on here for you. All of the important dates are here. You've got your deadline, and you can kind of keep track of how things are processing through our system, and then reminder of those earliest project start dates. We have some materials posted here for you. That includes the guidelines that we talked about, both the specific ones for this program and our general guidelines. We have application questions for you here in a Word document. Some people like to write their application draft in that and then paste their answers into the grant system later. If that's something you're interested in doing, that's available for you there. We've got the budget form for you, which is also available within the application. You could take a look at the scoring criteria, which we'll talk about a little later, that the reviewers will be using to look at your grant. You can look at what kind of questions you'll need to answer in your final report. And then here are just a couple of tutorials for using the grant system. The video is just a quick get started in the system thing, and then the PDF goes into some more detail. So we're going to head over to the grant system. Click that Apply Now button. If you already have an account in the system, you would just go ahead and log in. If you are new, you can click Create New Account and get that all set up for you. If you are not sure whether you or someone from your organization already has an account in the system, just contact us and we can let you know and get something set up for you if needed. So I'm just going to log in here. All right, and when you log in, you'll come to your applicant dashboard, which just has some history if you've been working in here before of what you've been doing. Or if you are first time in the system, have never applied for anything before, it'll actually take you directly to this apply page. Then you'll these are a list of all of the grants we have available right now. Scroll through and find the one you're looking for. Here's our art projects. If you'd like to just preview an application, you can click here to just look through it without having to actually start anything. Otherwise, you can click the apply button, which is what we're going to do. So once you are in a new application, there's a couple of buttons I want to point out to you here. First is the Copy Previous Answers button. This is really handy if you have done an application in the system before. You click this button and it'll bring up a list of the past applications you've done, and you can choose one of those to copy answers from into this application. If you're copying from a grant in a different program, for instance, it will only take questions that are the same between both applications. Then we have our other button here. This is the Collaborate button. If you click on that, you can invite someone to work on the application with you. All you need to do is stick in their email address here, decide what level of permission you want to give them in your application. You can type a little message here asking them whether you want them to proofread or fill in a particular section of the application or sign the application, and then just click this invite button. The person will receive an email, and if they don't already have an account in the system, it will just ask them to create a password. They don't have to set up a full account right away, though they can later. But then they'll be able to log right in and work in that application as well. Just some helpful links here right away. If you have some questions or need some help, you can schedule a meeting with me if you'd like. This is a quick way to just do that. Choose how you'd like to meet, and then choose the time you'd like to meet, and that just sets that right up for you. Or you can email me as well while you are working. You'll need a name for your project. This gives you some examples so you'll see it doesn't have to be anything very fancy, just descriptive of what you are doing. And here's where you will enter the amount you're requesting, though you'll probably want to wait to fill this in until after you have done your budget form. We've got some more links here again to the guidelines and the Word document with the application questions. We note for you here, you'll see that the character limit for most of the fields is very large, and we are really not expecting you to meet that limit. We allow that much room just in case on a particular question there's a lot that you need to say, but we're really not looking for you to come close to that in any of the fields. And here are those scoring criteria again, if you'd like to check those out. So in the actual questions in the application, you'll start out describing your project, and lots of details are good here, although it does tell you some things that you'll be talking about more later in the application. Here's where you'll put in your start and end dates. You can list here any events that'll be open to the public that are associated with your project, and we can take them from here and put them onto our area arts calendar on our website. So if you can provide the most complete information that you have, that makes it much easier for us to do that. Then this next section is worth a lot of your score. This is where you're describing what artists are involved in the project. So it asks you to talk about your artistic vision, which artists you've chosen, why you've chosen them, if there was a particular process that you went through to decide that, or if you're producing your own project, why did you choose this particular play or music selections, etc. Then you'll need to submit resumes or bios for each of the artists that are involved. If you are still looking for someone, you haven't chosen them yet, you'll need to include, instead of a resume, kind of a job description of what you're looking for and what process you have to search for that person. But here you'll be able to upload some resumes there. Then we've got our artist work samples. So for each of the artists that are involved in the project, you'll need to submit work samples. It gives you some guidelines for different types of samples, whether they're written, images, audio, or video, along with some links to some instructions on if you're needing to resize images, if you're wanting to combine multiple images or files into one document in order to fit into our upload fields. So there are 3 places here where you can upload, each allow up to 10 megabytes. And you can put a description in the field here of what is attached. But since there are just those 3 uploads, you may need to use these links to combine some of those into one document to fit. Then there's also a place for you to put in a website, or if you are connecting to somebody's videos on YouTube, for instance, you can list all of these here and describe them above. This next section is on the impact of your project. You can talk about why this activity is important to the community, how it meets their or your organization's artistic needs, how does it help your organization or your community grow, and how does it build on your mission and previous programming. Then you'll need to choose some of these outcomes off of this Minnesota Arts Outcomes list. If you click here, it'll bring a document here with the arts outcomes that you can choose from. You'll see they have areas of access, education, and cultural heritage. You can pick up to 3 of these. So you'll note the number of the one that you need, enter that or those if you have more than one into this field. Then we ask for each of those that you chose, what skill, knowledge, attitude, behavior will change for whom as a result of your project. So we're taking those really broad outcomes and making it specific to your project. Then you'll need to show your plan for measuring or proving that your goals have been met or that the changes you have anticipated have taken place. So you can explain how you're going to gather or document the results, and then what you're going to look for in that data or results that would show that those outcomes have been achieved. There's a sample here that you can look at. It gives a sample project of a choir putting on a jazz concert with a neighboring instrumental ensemble. So here it shows the outcome that they chose. So for one of them, they chose number 4. Then it shows how they took that and made it specific to their group and their project of what actual changes they're looking for. Then they show how they're going to measure it. They're going to survey the choir members at the beginning and the end of the season on several different areas. And then what they'll look for once they have those survey back is to see whether there are increases in the choir members' knowledge, skill, etc., after they have experienced this project. And then at the bottom here, it just shows how these little boxes will translate to what you will type up to go into this field here. We do have a blank worksheet that you can use to work on that and just kind of brainstorm your way through those components that are needed. You can also include an evaluation tool that you're using if you have a survey that you use. Maybe you're just going to list out some questions for people that you're going to interview about the project, but that can be uploaded here. Then we've got some audience numbers. Next is a question about reaching the underserved in your community. So we're asking you to look at groups that are either underserved or underrepresented in your community and by your organization. So first you will just kind of think about your community and which groups could be underserved or underrepresented in the arts in your community. So you might want to think about race or ethnicity, language, socioeconomic level, ability, etc. Then you'll take at least one of those groups that you identified and talk about how you're specifically going to reach out to that group and involve them in your project. So that could be things like actually involving them in your planning, providing translation of materials, providing transportation or childcare, etc. And then you're also asked to look specifically at ADA access, whether you have an access plan and how you're going to ensure that the project will be accessible. And please look beyond just mobility related accessibility. Think about vision, hearing, and other disabilities. So if you have anyone else working on your project that is not one of the artists you listed above, maybe you would put your project director here, maybe you're hiring someone to do something else for your project, you would just talk about that here. You can upload a resume for that person or just type in here about their experience. Then you'll talk a little bit about the planning and publicity for your project, how community groups will be showing their support if you're expecting donations of supplies or space or financial donations or collaborating with any other community organizations in any way. Next, we've got your budget form. And you will click right here to open that up. This is actually new this year, a PDF form. We had been using Excel previously. And just to note, if you are able to open that with Adobe Acrobat Reader, it will be able to calculate for you. So that's the best way to open these PDFs. So you'll get to your budget, you'll be able to type items in here and amounts over on the side, and you'll see it is totaling for you. And now we've got our total down here. And then looking at income for the project, you can type in about tickets that you're planning to sell. If you are expecting any other income, donations for the project. And then finally down here, what your organization may be contributing out of its own cash. And you'll have your total here for the funding for your project. Then this will calculate here the maximum amount that you can request, and it takes your total cost from up here minus your total other funding. And that is the maximum that you can request, or 7,000, whichever is less. So if your project costs $10,000, you still could only request 7,000. But we'll put in a request amount here. And then this profit line is something that you should check. This should equal 0 when you're done, just to make sure you've got the right amount of grant request and income for your project. So here, if your profit is less than 0, you would need to increase your other funding by that amount. So this says we don't have enough funding. Let's put some more funding in. And now it says our profit is $200. So then we've got too much profit. It says we can reduce our amount requested to fix that. So you'll want this profit to total 0, but then this will be your total grant request that you'll stick in to that field at the top of your application. So you can save this to your computer, fill it out, and then you will upload that here. It's got a narrative field here if you need to put some more details that didn't fit into that budget sheet. If you need to purchase a piece of equipment that costs more than $500 or have some labor for your project that is more than $500, we ask that you provide 2 bids from 2 separate vendors for that item. And there are places to upload that here. And you can talk about why you chose a particular one. And we're not necessarily looking for the cheaper one always to be chosen, but you may want to talk about why you chose the one you did. This next section is just about your organization. We ask for your mission statement, history, programs, constituents, some information about your board members, the most recently completed fiscal year, and then it'll ask you, is your organization an official government unit? If you mark yes, that's all you need to do there. If you are not a city or a county and mark no, then we ask that you fill out this financial information section. So you'll enter in a beginning balance that you had for the beginning of that year, your income for that year, your expenses for that year, and then where you ended up at the end of that. So that would be your beginning balance plus your income minus your expenses. And then you've got a place to add any notes about that. Then we just are collecting some data. A lot of this is passed on to the Minnesota State Arts Board or Minnesota Citizens for the Arts. And for these where it says view codes, you can just click that and choose the code that you need to enter into the field there. And this, where they're asking about audience numbers again, is for a year's worth of audience that corresponds with that most recent completed fiscal year that you entered above here. Then we just need some contact information. Your project director, your authorizing official. Then we ask that you let us know which one of those people is the grant writer in case we have questions and need to contact you. If you are not one of the people already listed here and click other, you can enter your information there. Then it asks you if you are using a fiscal sponsor for the project. If no, just one question comes up asking about if you are an awarded a grant, which of those addresses listed should the funds be sent to? If yes, you are using a fiscal sponsor, the contact information for them will show up. And this is where you would need to enter that fiscal sponsor agreement that you have signed with them. Then you attach your 501c3 status letter, or if you're using a fiscal sponsor, you would attach their status letter. And government units do not need to attach anything here. And then we finish up with signatures, which typing your name here acts as your signature. And this is a place where it's really handy to use that collaborate button for, say, your authorizing official to come in here and sign. Down at the bottom, you can save your application or submit it. We're going to save for now. And you'll see when we do that, it tells us these are the questions that still need to be answered. Since we haven't done anything, it's all of them. To continue working, you would just run back here, the continue button. It does also auto save while you're working as well. But we're going to go back to our dashboard. And so now this here is the application that we just started. If you are coming back in here and you want to edit it, that is right here. Just click that edit application link. If you're awarded a grant, this is the same place you'll come back to find your contract and final report to work on. And we are going to head back over to our slides and stop again for a moment for some questions. I think I saw something come through on the chat. I'm going to unmute everybody again. Question is, I've also applied for a state arts board grant, which will be decided in December. I'm considering this grant as a backup or a different project. Can we be considered for both grants? If we receive the arts board grant for the interactive arts project, we would be requesting for a different project. You can get funding for projects from both the State Arts Board and from SMOC. It even can be for the same project. They just say that there can't be more than 90% of the funds for your project that are state funds. So both the funding coming from the State Arts Board and the funding coming from SMOC would be state funds. Does that answer your question? Just to add a little more to that, you could not be asking for funding that would cover the same exact things for the same project from both funders, so there shouldn't be any duplication.
We could expand the idea and request funds for the expansion.
I think some of that depends on timing. You know, if you know what happened with your state arts board grant before you're applying for the SMOC grant, and then can adjust your project as needed. But if you had to, say, apply for both of them at the same time, you couldn't later come back and change your project. And you'd have to, if you were applying for the same thing from both, you'd have to not accept one of the grants.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Not hearing anything else, I'm going to mute everybody again and continue with the rest of our information here. So just some tips for you as you are working on your grant application. It's so good to start early. You'll need to make sure you have time to gather all of those work samples and resumes that you need, all of the budget things that you need, and then if you run into any questions, you have time to get those answered. Make sure to read the guidelines really carefully. You'll notice that when we looked at the application questions, a lot of them have multiple parts to each question, so make sure you are covering all of those in your answer. We talked about before as well about keeping your answers clear and concise. It's also really good to assume that the grant reviewers don't know anything about your organization or your project. So it's a good thing if you can find someone who is not familiar with what you're doing and have them read through the application and say, wait, this doesn't make sense when you are so used to your own organization and programs. It's sometimes easy to forget some of those things that not everyone would know about it. And at the same time, that would be good for somebody to proofread your application. There are a few ways you can have assistance from us while you're working on that. It's a great idea to call us to talk about your project before you start an application. We can make sure that you're applying under the right grant program, that the kind of expenses you're thinking about are eligible, Also, you can contact us anytime with questions you run into as you're filling out your application. And finally, we can actually review your application for you before you submit it. If you let us know up to about 2 weeks before the deadline, we can guarantee that we're able to take a look at that. We can look through and see if there's anything you're missing or anything concerning about your eligibility, or if you need to answer question from a little different perspective, things like that. So feel free to contact us for any of those questions that you have. So what happens once you submit your application? First, it comes to staff here and we'll review your application for eligibility and make sure everything is complete. If we do see an issue there, you'll have 48 hours to remedy that. Then all of those applications in that round will go on to a review panel of individuals from around our region. They will score the applications and discuss them based on the criteria for the grant program, which we'll look at in a second. And then their scores and recommendations go to our board of directors, who will then do their final funding decisions based on those recommendations. So here are the criteria that you will be scored on. First, they will look at the artistic quality and merit of the project. You'll see that's worth 18 points, which is by far the most amount of points of any of the criteria here. They'll look at the impact on the participants and audience. That's worth 8 points. What you're doing to reach the underserved through your project, worth 5 points, and your ability to accomplish the project, worth 5 points. So that's things like, does your planning make sense? Do your budget numbers make sense? Just how well have you planned for this? So you will need to pass on each of these criteria in order to be considered for funding. Also, that criteria document that was linked to on our website and in the application has a lot more details under each of these criteria, so you can really dig down into what they are looking for. Also, once the panel has finished its scoring, you may be able to be awarded some additional points for each of these other criteria that you may meet. If you're a first-time SMOC applicant, if your organization is led by or primarily serving BIPOC or LGBTQIA2+ communities or people with disabilities, or if your organization is from a county that has received 3 or fewer SMOC grants in the last fiscal year. If your grant is awarded, you'll need to complete a contract, and after that, you will receive 80% of your grant award before your start date. Then you'll receive the remaining 20% of your grant after your project and your final report are completed. You'll need to acknowledge the grant on any of your marketing materials. There'll be a credit line you will be given when you sign your contract. You may also need to use this Minnesota Legacy logo in your publicity, depending on if your funds have come out of those funds. And all of the credit lines and posters and logos will be sent to you and are available on our website, so you won't have to figure that out on your own. You'll need to do an online final report within 60 days after your project end date. It's a good idea to look at your final report and the questions when you're just starting your project, so you know what kind of information you're going to need to gather as far as attendance, costs, outcomes, etc. And we also really expect that you're going to spend what you said you were going to in your budget. So this would not be the time to, after you're awarded a grant, then look at where can we save money on our project. We really need to have you spend all of those funds. And if it looks like your expenses are going to need to change, you should contact us to get those changes approved. That is it for our art project grants. I just wanted to mention a couple other opportunities that are coming up. We have the Art Legacy Project grant program, which is kind of similar activities to what you can do here, but on a much larger scale and higher impact. There's more funding that you can request there, but we're having a webinar on January 21st about that grant program and a related planning grant for that. We also have available right now through the Minnesota Disaster Relief Fund some grants that we're calling Going Virtual grants. And these are $1,000 grants to help arts organizations specifically with what they need to do some virtual programming, whether that's equipment or working with a consultant. We've got a couple deadlines coming up, November 1st and December 1st. If we have not awarded all our funds by then, we will probably add some more deadlines. Then a couple other things for you to be aware of. We have grant support open hours the second Tuesday of the month. We've been doing those virtually now, but you can find on our website where to connect to that. You can just jump on the video call and ask us anything, talk about anything. The next date we're going to be doing that is November 10th from 11 to 1. And then we have monthly conversations, one for arts organizations and one for artists. The next one for organizations is coming up on November 17th at 3. We're going to be using that as kind of a focus group for our needs assessment that's going on right now. So if you'd like to participate in that, check that out. And then our artist conversation is going to be on the 19th at 5:30. And we will be talking with Olga Krasowska, who has an exhibit coming up in our gallery. Here's just our contact information again. The best way to reach us these days is by email, since we're kind of in and out of the office. But please feel free to contact us with anything that you have questions. And that's it for our presentation. So I can stick around for a little bit and have unmuted anyone if there is anything you'd like to talk about. Well, it sounds like there aren't any questions, so I am going to sign off, but thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you.